Welcome to Sleepy Love Tales, soothing romance for a restful night. If these stories help you unwind, be sure to subscribe. For now, close your eyes and let's begin tonight's story. If this is enough. The clock in Dr. Raman's office ticks with the aggressive precision of something expensive. She watches the second hand complete another rotation, while her husband shifts beside her on the cream-coloured sofa, his hand resting on his knee, close enough to reach for hers but separate. "Let's try something different today," Dr. Raman says, her pen poised above her yellow legal pad. "I'd like each of you to write a letter to the other, not to share aloud, just to write. Sometimes we discover what we mean by seeing it on the page. The assignment feels both absurd and dangerous. They've been married for 7 years. What could possibly need to be written that hasn't already been said in the careful architecture of their shared life?" But she takes the paper Dr. Raman offers, and so does he. "Dear Michael, do you remember the library? Not ours, the one where we met. November, I think, or maybe early December. You were in the economics section, and I was supposed to be researching 18th century literature, but I'd gotten distracted by the way the afternoon light came through those tall windows. You looked up and our eyes met, and for just a moment I thought, but I didn't think anything. That's the truth. Or if I did, I thought, this is someone I could know. This is someone safe." She stops writing, looks up. Michael's pen moves steadily across his page, his brow furrowed in that familiar expression of concentration. She spent 7 years watching that face, learning its vocabulary of small tensions and releases. The scholarship that brought her to that campus had felt like a lifeline, a way out of a childhood spent making do. Making less seemed like enough. She'd learned early that gratitude was its own form of currency, that if you were careful and quiet and didn't ask for too much, people would let you stay. Michael had been careful too, she realises now, methodical in his affection, building their relationship like one of his economic models, variables controlled, outcomes predicted, risk minimised. 5 more minutes, Dr. Raman says gently. "You proposed in that same library, do you remember? In the archives room where no one ever went. You said you'd been carrying the ring for 2 months, waiting for the perfect moment. But then you realised that we didn't need perfect. We needed real." I said yes immediately. I didn't hesitate. Why didn't I hesitate? She sets down her pen. That last line wasn't supposed to appear. She folds the paper quickly before Michael can see, before Dr. Raman can ask her to share. "Time," Dr. Raman says. "You can keep those, or share them later, if you choose. But I want you both to notice. How did it feel to write to each other rather than speak?" Michael clears his throat. "Easier," he says, "and harder." She nods, still clutching her folded paper. That night, in their carefully curated bedroom, grey walls, white bedding, a single framed photograph from their honeymoon. In Montreal, she lies awake listening to Michael's breathing slow and deepen. The letter's in her purse downstairs in the kitchen where she left it. She should destroy it. Instead, she gets up quietly, goes downstairs in the dark and writes another. "Dear Michael, what if careful isn't enough? What if all this time we've been so busy building something stable that we forgot to ask if it was what we actually wanted? I'm afraid that if I say this out loud, you'll think I'm ungrateful, or worse, that I'm someone who doesn't know how to be satisfied. My mother used to say that about women who left their marriages. She didn't know when she had it good. But here's what I can't stop thinking about. What if having it good isn't the same as having it right? What if I'm hungry for something I can't even name?" She folds this letter too, puts it in the back of the drawer where she keeps old receipts and expired coupons and other small evidences of a life being lived within careful margins. Upstairs, Michael is still sleeping. She stands in the doorway and watches him. This good man, this kind man, this man who has never once raised his voice or forgotten an anniversary, or failed to notice when she's had a hard day. This man she married because he felt like safety. This man she's beginning to realise she's never fully desired. The thought stops her breath. She goes back downstairs, pulls out the letter, adds one more line. What if I told you that sometimes I dream about running? Not from you. Never from you. Just running. Into something I can't see yet. Something that might be waiting. If only I were brave enough to look. She puts the letter away and goes back to bed. Michael turns toward her in his sleep, his arm draping across her waist with the unconscious familiarity of 7 years of shared nights. She lies very still and thinks about the library, about that first moment, about how she told herself that what she felt wasn't disappointment but something more, mature, relief. Relief that she'd found someone who wouldn't ask her to be anything other than what she already was. Someone who would never require her to run. The clock on the nightstand ticks through the dark hours. Outside, November rain begins to fall on their tidy neighbourhood with its tidy lawns and its tidy lives. And she lies there, awake and still, wondering if the problem with careful is that it never has to be brave. Dr. Raman assigns homework. Spend 30 minutes each day in conversation without solving anything. Just talk, she says. See what emerges when you're not trying to fix it. They choose evening walks. Their neighbourhood is designed for them. Young professionals with modest but growing ambitions. Trees planted at mathematically pleasing intervals. Sidewalks smooth enough for running strollers though they don't have children yet. Haven't decided if they want them. Or rather, haven't decided if they want the version of themselves that would have them. Tell me something I don't know, Michael says on the third walk. His hands are in his pockets. They're not holding hands these days, though neither has acknowledged the shift. She thinks for a long time. The air smells like chimney smoke and fallen leaves. Someone is cooking dinner. Garlic, butter, something rich. I'm not sure I know how to be happy, she says finally. He stops walking. What? I know how to be grateful. I know how to be satisfied. I know how to make a list of everything that's good and tell myself that's enough. But actual happiness, the kind where you're not checking to make sure it's still there, I don't know if I've ever felt that. Not sustained. Not without underneath it this feeling that it could all be taken away. Michael stands very still. A leaf falls between them. Because of your childhood, he says carefully, not a question. Maybe. Probably. Does it matter why? It matters because... He stops, starts again. Because I've spent 7 years trying to give you security. I thought that was what you needed. I thought if I could just be stable enough, present enough, if I could prove that I wasn't going anywhere, you thought you could fix me. I thought I could love you into feeling safe. She looks at him then, really looks, and sees something she's never allowed herself to see before. He's terrified too. Terrified that love might not be enough. Terrified that all his careful constancy might be insufficient. Michael, she says softly, what if neither of us can be fixed? They walk in silence after that. 3 more blocks, then home to the house they bought together. The mortgage they split exactly down the middle. The life they've architected with such meticulous fairness. In the kitchen, making tea, he says, "Do you remember the night before our wedding?" She nods. They'd stayed apart that night, observing tradition. She'd been at her mother's house, in her childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling and thinking about thresholds. "I almost called you," he says, "around midnight. I wanted to, I don't know, make sure you were sure." "Why didn't you?" "Because I was afraid you'd say you weren't." The kettle whistles. Neither moves to turn it off. "And now?" she asks. "Now I'm afraid you'll say you weren't. Past tense. That you made a mistake and you've been too kind to tell me." She turns off the burner, pours water over tea bags, watching the colour bloom and spread. "I don't think I made a mistake," she says slowly. "I think I made the safest choice I knew how to make. And I think maybe we both did." He takes his mug, wraps both hands around it though the ceramic is too hot. Is safe such a terrible thing to be? His voice is barely audible. No, but it might be a terrible thing to settle for. That night they lie in bed without touching. Not angry, not distant, just separate. She can feel the inches between them like a physical presence, a gap that contains all the words they don't know how to say. "Can I tell you something?" Michael says into the dark. "Yes." "When we met, I was in love with someone else, a woman from my ethics seminar. She was brilliant, terrifying. She said whatever she thought and didn't apologise, and she wanted things loudly, demanded them. She was going to change the world, and she knew it." He pauses. She doesn't speak. "And I was drawn to her like gravity, but I was also exhausted by her. Every conversation felt like a test I was failing. Every silence felt like an accusation. When she finally ended it, told me I was too careful, too timid, that I'd never actually take a risk, I was devastated and relieved. And then you met me," she says quietly. "And then I met you, and you didn't require anything I couldn't give. You didn't push, you didn't demand, you just accepted. Me, us, this." He turns toward her, though they still don't touch. "I thought that was love," he says, "the absence of fear, the presence of peace. What do you think it is now?" "I don't know anymore, but I think maybe love is supposed to ask something of you, supposed to require you to grow, and I think I chose you because you let me stay exactly who I was." The confession hangs in the air between them, not cruel, but devastating in its honesty. "Why are you telling me this?" she whispers. "Because Dr. Rahman said to tell you something you don't know, and because if we're going to do this, actually do this, figure out if this marriage can be something more than safe, then I need you to know that I'm as afraid as you are." She reaches out then, not to comfort, but to confirm. Her hand finds his in the dark, palm to palm. His skin is warm, familiar. They lie like that for a long time, holding hands like teenagers, like people who don't yet know how to ask for more than this small connection. "I've been writing letters," she says finally. "Letters I don't send. To you." "What do they say?" "Things I'm afraid to say out. Loud." "Will you show me?" "I don't know. Maybe. Eventually." His thumb moves across her knuckles, a small gesture that contains multitudes. "I want to read them," he says, "even if they hurt, especially if they hurt." She thinks about the drawer downstairs, about the folded papers accumulating like small acts of sedition. Letters that say, "What if this isn't enough? What if I need something I can't name? What if the life we've built is a beautiful prison and neither of us has the courage to ask for the key?" "Okay," she says, "but not yet. I'm not ready yet." "When you are." They fall asleep still holding hands, but in the morning she wakes alone. Michael is already up, already dressed, already performing the morning routine that shapes their days. Coffee made, newspaper skimmed, emails checked. When she comes downstairs, he kisses her forehead, a habit so ingrained neither of them remembers when it started, and asks if she slept well. "Fine," she says, though she dreamed all night, of running. On their next walk, he asks her about desire. Not just, "I don't mean sex," though that too, but what do you desire? If you could have anything, be anything, do anything. The question is so enormous she almost laughs. "I don't know. That's the problem. I don't know how to want things. Not real things. Not things that might require me to be selfish or difficult or demanding." "Try," he says. "Just try. What if there were no consequences? What if you couldn't fail? What if I wasn't here to disappoint?" They've stopped walking. They're standing under a streetlight that's flickering, some malfunction in its timing, so it keeps going dark and then bright again, dark and then bright. "I want," she says slowly, testing each word, to feel necessary, not needed in the way that's about function, not about being useful or good or appropriate. I want to feel like my presence in the world makes some kind of essential difference, like I'm not just, she struggles for the word, interchangeable. The light flickers. In the darkness she can barely see his face. You've never felt that? He asks. With me? I've felt cherished, protected, valued. She takes a breath, but not necessary. Not like if I disappeared, there would be a hole in the shape of me. More like I've been a good solution to the problem of your loneliness. It's the most honest thing she's ever said to him, and she braces for his anger, his hurt, his defense. Instead, he says, "Yes, I think that's fair." The light comes back on. They look at each other. "I don't know how to love someone in the way you're describing," he says. "I don't know if I'm capable of that kind of intensity, obsession, whatever you want to call it. I love through steadiness, through showing up, through being present and predictable, and I don't know if that will ever feel like enough to you." "I don't know either," she admits. They walk home in silence, but something has shifted. Not resolution, but recognition. That night she writes another letter. "Dear Michael, you asked what I desire. Here's the truth. I desire to be devoured. Not destroyed, devoured. I want someone to need me the way fire needs air. I want to be looked at like I'm the answer to a question someone's been asking their whole life. I want to matter urgently, not just steadily. And I don't know if that's something you can give me. I don't know if it's something anyone can give anyone. Maybe it's something I have to give myself. But here's what I do know. I don't want to spend the rest of my life being grateful for a love that doesn't challenge me. I don't want to be comfortable. I want to be claimed. And I don't know if that makes me ungrateful or honest. But I'm tired of not knowing the difference." She folds the letter, adds it to the drawer. Upstairs, Michael is already asleep. She stands in the doorway watching him. This good man, this careful man, and feels a tenderness so acute it's almost grief, because she loves him, and she's beginning to understand that love might not be enough. The letter is discovered on a Wednesday. She doesn't remember leaving it out. Must have been careless, distracted, must have forgotten to put it back in the drawer with the others. Michael finds it in the morning while looking for a warranty receipt. Something mundane, something that doesn't matter now and will never matter again. She's upstairs when she hears the silence change quality, the particular stillness of someone absorbing a blow. When she comes down, he's sitting at the kitchen table, the letter unfolded between his hands. He's not reading it anymore, just staring at it, like it might rearrange itself into something less damaging. "Michael," she says, but her voice has no power. He looks up. His face is very pale. "How many are there?" She doesn't pretend to misunderstand. 8, maybe 9. "All like this?" "Some, not all. Some are kinda." He makes a sound that might be a laugh, but isn't. "Kinda. Jesus." He puts his head in his hands. "I'm not sure which would be worse, if you'd been planning to show them to me or if you never were." She sits down across from him. The morning light is coming through the kitchen window, illuminating the breakfast dishes neither of them has cleared, the coffee growing cold in their mugs. Evidence of an ordinary morning about to calcify into the morning everything changed. "I wasn't planning anything," she says. "I was just trying to figure out what I felt, what I wanted. And what you wanted was to be devoured." He picks up the letter, quotes from it without looking. "I want someone to need me the way fire needs air. That's what you wrote. 3 weeks ago, according to the date. Yes. Did you mean it?" She wants to lie, wants to soften it, explain it away, tell him it was just words, just a confused moment, just the aftermath of too much therapy. Instead, she says, "Yes, I meant it." He leaves for work without saying goodbye. She hears the door close, the car start, the sound of him driving away. She sits at the kitchen table for a long time, the letter still lying there, the handwriting looking strange and accusatory in the morning light. She reads it again, tries to find the lie in it, the exaggeration, the unfair thing that would let her take it back. But it's all true. Every word. She wants to be necessary. She wants to matter urgently. She wants to be more than a good solution to someone's loneliness. And she doesn't know if Michael can give her that. Worse, she doesn't know if she has the right to ask. He doesn't come home that night. Sent a text around 6, staying at David's. Need time to think. She walks through their house, their carefully assembled life, and sees it differently now. The furniture they chose together at IKEA, assembling it on Saturday afternoons with patient domesticity. The paint colours they debated, settling always on the safest choice, the one that wouldn't offend or challenge. The bookshelves organised by subject, then alphabetically, because Michael likes order and she likes the look of order even if she doesn't care about it intrinsically. Everything in this house is a compromise. Everything is reasonable. Nothing demands anything. She makes dinner for one, doesn't eat it. Pours a glass of wine, then a second. Sits on their sensible grey couch and stares at the wall. Around 9, the phone rings. It's Michael. "I read the others," he says without preamble. Her stomach drops. "How did you—" "The drawer under the warranties. I found them all. I've been at David's reading them." She closes her eyes. "Do you know what the worst part is?" His voice is very steady, very controlled. "Not that you're unhappy. I knew you were unhappy. Maybe not how much, but I knew. The worst part is that in 8 letters, you never once say that you love me. Michael, you say you respect me. You say you're grateful. You say I'm a good man, a kind man, a safe man. But you never say you love me. Did you notice that?" She hadn't. But now that he's said it, she can't unsay it. "I do love you," she whispers. "Do you? Or do you just appreciate me? Because those aren't the same thing, and I think we've been pretending they are for 7 years." She can't answer. "I need to ask you something," he says, "and I need you to be honest. Is there someone else?" "No. God, no. There's never been anyone else." "I don't mean physically. I mean in your head. In these letters. Are you writing to me, or are you writing to someone you wish I was?" The question lands like a blade. "I don't know," she says. The line is quiet for a long time. "I'll be at David's for a while," he says finally. "A week. Maybe more. You can stay in the house. It's half yours anyway. But I need..." His voice cracks. "I need time to figure out if I'm mourning something I never actually had." "Michael, I loved you," he says. Past tense. I'm not sure I can say it in the present. Anymore. Not until I know if the person I loved actually exists. He hangs up before she can respond. She doesn't sleep. She lies in their bed. Her bed now, temporarily, maybe permanently, and stares at the ceiling and thinks about all the ways she's been cruel without meaning to be. Because he's right. She never said she loved him. Not in the letters. Not in the raw, unguarded place where she was trying to be honest. She said she wanted to be devoured. She said she was hungry. She said she felt like she was living in a beautiful prison. But she never said, "I love you." And that's what makes this so hard. Around 3 in the morning she gets up and writes another letter. But this one she doesn't fold and hide. This one she leaves on his pillow, where he'll find it if he comes home. When he comes home. If. "Dear Michael, you're right. I never said I loved you. I don't know why. Maybe because I was so busy trying to explain what was wrong that I forgot to name what was right. But here it is. I love you. I have always loved you. Even when I was writing those other letters, even when I was imagining running, even when I was cruel enough to call what we have a compromise. I love your steadiness. I love the way you fold laundry with the same careful attention you give to everything. I love that you've never once made me feel stupid or small. I love that you remember things, my mother's birthday, the name of my childhood dog, how I like my coffee. I love that you chose me, that you keep choosing me, even though I'm making it so hard. But here's the thing, I don't know if love is enough, and I'm terrified that saying that out loud makes me sound like a romantic child who thinks passion is more important than commitment. I don't think that. I know that what we have is rare and precious, and so many people never find even this much peace. But I'm also terrified that if I settle for peace, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what I gave up to get it. You asked if there's someone else. There isn't. But maybe there's a version of myself I never became, and I can feel her watching me, asking why I chose safety over courage. I don't know how to reconcile these things. I don't know how to be both grateful and hungry, how to love you and still feel like I'm dying of thirst. All I know is that I'm sorry, for the hurt, for the confusion, for not being clear enough or brave enough to say this before I wrote it in letters I never meant for you to see. I love you, and I don't know if that's enough for either of us anymore. She leaves the letter and goes downstairs, makes coffee in the pre-dawn dark, watches the streetlights blink off as morning comes. Her phone buzzes. A text from Michael. I'm coming home tomorrow, not to decide anything, just to talk, okay? She types back, okay. Then she goes outside and sits on the front steps in her pyjamas and waits for the sun to rise on whatever comes next. Michael comes home on a Friday evening. She's made dinner. Nothing elaborate, just pasta and salad. The kind of meal they've shared 1,000 times. But her hands shake as she sets the table, and she has to try 3 times to open the wine. He looks tired when he walks in. Thinner maybe, or just worn. He puts his bag down by the door and stands there, neither of them sure of the protocol for this moment. Hi, she says. Hi. They sit at the kitchen table, the food between them like a neutral territory. For a while they just eat, or pretend to. She pushes pasta around her plate. He takes small, methodical bites, the way he does everything. Finally he sets down his fork. I read your last letter, he says. The one you left on the pillow. She nods. You said you don't know if love is enough, and I've been thinking about that all week. What does enough even mean? Enough for what? To stay married? To be happy? To justify the investment of 7 years? I don't know. I don't either, but I think... He stops, starts again. I think maybe we've been asking the wrong question. Maybe it's not whether love is enough. Maybe it's whether we're willing to let it be enough, even when it's not perfect, even when we're hungry for things we can't name. She feels something crack open in her chest. Michael, Wait, let me finish. He reaches across the table, takes her hand. His palm is warm, solid. I've spent this week being angry, hurt, feeling betrayed, even though I know that's not entirely fair. But underneath all that, there's this other feeling I keep trying to ignore. What feeling? Relief. She stares at him. Relief that it's finally on the table, that we're not pretending anymore, that we can stop being so fucking careful with each other and just... He makes a helpless gesture. Be honest, even if honesty hurts, especially if it hurts. Are you saying you want to stay married? Her voice is barely audible. I'm saying I want to know who we are when we're not being careful, when we're not trying, to be the people we think we should be. I want to know what happens if we actually risk something. Risk what? He squeezes her hand. Risk this. Risk us. Risk the possibility that if we tell the whole truth, we might not survive it. They don't make love that night, but they talk. They talk until midnight, then until 2, then until the sky starts to lighten. They talk about the thesis advisor she had a crush on in grad school, the one who made her feel visible in a way Michael never has. About the woman from his ethics seminar, the one he mentioned before, and how he still sometimes wonders what his life would have looked like if he'd been brave enough to keep her. They talk about desire, not the safe, comfortable desire of 7 years together, but the dangerous kind. The kind that asks you to change, to risk, to surrender. "Do you know what I'm afraid of?" she asks as the sun comes up. They're on the couch now, sitting at opposite ends, facing each other. "Tell me." "I'm afraid that if I admit how much I want, I'll be unlovable, that I'll be too much, that you'll look at me and see someone greedy and demanding and you'll realise you made a mistake." "And do you know what I'm afraid of?" He leans forward. "I'm afraid that I'm not capable of the kind of love you need, that I'll try and still fall short and you'll leave anyway, and I'll have proven that I was never enough to begin with." They look at each other across the coffee table, across 7 years, across the careful architecture they've built and are now dismantling brick by brick. "What if," she says slowly, "we stopped trying to be enough? What if we just tried to be honest? How? I don't know. But maybe we start by admitting what we actually want, not what we think we should want, not what's reasonable or fair or safe, just what we want." Michael nods slowly. "Okay, you first." She takes a breath. "I want you to need me. Not in the calm, grateful way you need a good partner. I want you to need me desperately. I want to matter to you in a way that scares you. I want..." She's crying now, can't help it. "I want to feel essential." He moves across the couch, pulls her into his arms. She can feel his heart beating against her cheek. "Okay," he says. "Okay, my turn." She waits. "I want to let go," he says quietly. "I want to stop being so controlled. I want to... God, I want to be able to want you without worrying about whether I'm doing it right, whether I'm enough. I want to be selfish. I want to take. And I've never let myself do that because I was so afraid that if I did, you'd see how desperate I actually am." She pulls back, looks at him. "Desperate. For you. For this. For the feeling that I'm not just maintaining a system, keeping a marriage running smoothly. I want..." His voice breaks. "I want to lose control with you, and I don't know how." Something shifts in the air between them. The door opening, a possibility emerging. "Show me," she whispers. He kisses her. It's not like their usual kisses, not the polite, affectionate kisses they exchange in greeting and parting. This is raw, urgent. His hands in her hair, pulling her closer, almost rough in his need. Her hands grip his shoulders, nails pressing through the fabric of his shirt, holding on like she might fall. They break apart, breathless. His eyes are dark, pupils wide, and she can see 7 years of restraint beginning to crack. "Upstairs," she says, her voice hoarse. "No." His hand finds the small of her back, pulls her flush against him. "Here, now, I'm done waiting." The words send heat flooding through her. She's never heard this tone in his voice, command mixed with desperation, control slipping into pure need. He kisses her again, deeper this time, his mouth claiming hers with an intensity that makes her knees weaken. His tongue traces her lower lip before delving deeper, tasting her, and she responds with equal hunger, her hands moving to the buttons of his shirt. "Wait," he breathes against her mouth. He takes both her wrists in one hand, gentle but firm, holding them still. "I said I wanted to take. Let me." The words, the touch, the way he's looking at her, like she's water and he's been crossing a desert. It's everything she wrote about in those hidden letters. Everything she was afraid to ask for. "Yes," she whispers. "Yes." He releases her wrists only to frame her face with both hands, kissing her with a thoroughness that makes her dizzy. His thumbs trace her cheekbones, tender even in his urgency, and when he finally pulls back, they're both breathing hard. "I need to see you," he says. "All of you. Not just your body." I want to see everything you've been hiding." She understands what he means. She stands, and with trembling fingers begins to unbutton her blouse. Not seductively. She's never been good at that kind of performance. But honestly, each button revealing more skin, more vulnerability until the fabric slides from her shoulders. Michael's breath catches audibly. In 7 years he's seen her countless times, but never like this. Never with her standing before him in the grey morning light, chin lifted, eyes meeting his, offering herself not out of duty or routine, but out of genuine desire. "I'm hungry," she says, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I'm so hungry, Michael, for something I don't even know how to name. And I'm afraid that hunger makes me ungrateful, makes me broken." "You're not broken." He stands, crosses to her, and the way he moves, purposeful, predatory, makes her pulse quicken. He traces the line of her collarbone with his fingertips, featherlight, and she shivers. "You're just alive, and so beautiful it hurts to look at you." His hands slide down her arms, across her ribs, learning her body as if for the first time. When his palms find her, his touch gentle but possessive, she gasps. "Are you?" she manages to ask. "Are you alive with me?" Instead of answering, he lowers his head, his mouth finding the curve of her neck, the hollow of her throat. Each kiss is a brand, a claim, and she arches into him, her hands tangling in his hair. "Michael," she gasps, "please." "Please what?" He looks up at her, and there's something in his eyes she's never seen before. Power, possession, pure satisfaction at her need. "Tell me what you want." "You. I want you. Not the careful version. I want..." She struggles for the words, her mind hazy with desire. "I want you to be ruthless with me. I want you to take. I want to feel necessary." Something breaks in his expression, the last restraint shattering. "You are necessary," he says, his voice rough. "You're so necessary I can't breathe without you." She stands before him, vulnerable in ways that have nothing to do with clothing, everything to do with honesty. The asymmetry should frighten her. It does frighten her, but it's exactly what she needs, to be exposed while he remains in control, to surrender without safety. His hands bracket her hips, thumbs tracing gentle circles. "Is that enough?" he asks. "Is that what you need?" "Yes," she gasps. "Yes, but don't stop. Don't be gentle. I don't want gentle." "Good." He pulls her against him. "Because I don't think I can be gentle right now." He kisses her again, one hand tangling in her hair, tilting her head back to give him access to her throat. He kisses down the column of her neck, and when his teeth graze the sensitive skin where neck meets shoulder, she cries out. "Too much," he murmurs against her skin. "Not enough," she breathes. "More." He lifts her. She weighs nothing to him in this moment, and carries her the 3 steps to the couch. Lays her down on the cushions. The morning light through the windows paints her skin gold, illuminates every curve. "God," he says, 7 years. 7 years, and I never let myself just look at you like this." "Look at me now," she says. "See me now." He does. His gaze travels the length of her body, and she fights the instinct to cover herself, to hide. Instead, she opens to him. Arms, heart, everything. An invitation. A claim. His hand traces a path from her ankle to her inner thigh, his touch light but deliberate. "Tell me," he says. "Tell me what you need." "Touch me," she whispers. "Touch me like you own me." "I do own you." His fingers move higher. "Just like you own me. We've always belonged to each other. I've just been too afraid to act like it." His touch is revelation. He explores with patience that's almost cruel, learning every response, every gasp, every shiver. She's beyond words now, lost in sensation, in the building heat. in the way he's claiming her with hands and mouth and breath. "You're so responsive," he murmurs, watching her face. "So beautiful like this. I want to memorize every sound you make." When his mouth follows where his hands have been, she cries out his name. The sensation is overwhelming, heat and pressure and pleasure building like a storm. She's never felt so exposed, so claimed, so thoroughly possessed. "Michael," she gasps, "I can't." "Yes, you can." He doesn't stop. "Let go. I want to feel you come apart for me." And she does. The climax crashes through her like a wave, powerful and consuming, making her back arch and her hands fist in his hair. He works her through it, gentling as she becomes sensitive, pressing soft kisses as she trembles and gasps. When she finally opens her eyes, he's watching her with an expression of such naked desire that it steals her breath all over again. "Come here," she says, reaching for him. He stands and she watches as he removes his own barriers. She's always known he was beautiful, but she's never allowed herself to really look, to really appreciate the lines of his body, the strength in his frame. When he returns to her, skin to skin, the contact is electric. They fit together perfectly. They always have. But this time there's no hesitation, no careful choreography. Just need and heat and 7 years of restraint finally breaking. "Look at me," he says as they join. "I want to see your eyes." She meets his gaze, and the connection, physical, emotional, spiritual, is almost more than she can bear. For a moment, neither of them moves. They just breathe together, complete. Then he begins to move, and thought becomes impossible. It's not gentle. She asked for ruthless, and he gives it to her, each movement deep and purposeful, making her gasp. His hands grip her hips, holding her, grounding her even as he sends her flying. "Is this what you wanted?" he asks, his voice rough. "Is this how you needed it?" "Yes," she cries out. "Yes, don't stop. Never." He leans down, captures her mouth in a fierce kiss. "I'm never stopping. You're mine. Say it." "I'm yours," she gasps against his lips. "I'm yours." The rhythm builds, urgent and relentless. She wraps her legs around him, takes him deeper, meets him movement for movement. The couch creaks beneath them. The morning light strengthens. Somewhere outside their neighbourhood is waking, but here in this room there's nothing ordinary, nothing careful, nothing held back. "I'm close," she gasps. "Michael, wait for me." His rhythm becomes erratic, control fraying. "Surrender with me." She holds back barely, her whole body tensing. Then he shifts angle and she shatters, crying out as waves of pleasure crash through her. She feels the moment he follows, the way he shudders, the way he groans her name, the way he collapses against her, trembling. They lie tangled together, hearts racing, skin damp with exertion. She can feel the occasional aftershock ripple through both of them. "That was," he starts. "I know. We've never. I know." He lifts his head, looks at her, and his eyes are bright with emotion. "I love you. God, I love you so much. I love you too." She touches his face, traces the line of his jaw. "I didn't know it could be like that. Between us. I didn't know we could. Neither did I." He kisses her softly. "But I want it to be like that. Always. No more holding back. No more being careful. Promise. I promise. I'm going to need you like this every day. I'm going to make you feel essential every time I touch you." She pulls him down for another kiss, deeper this time, already feeling desire stirring again despite her exhaustion. "Upstairs," she murmurs against his mouth. "Take me to bed. We have years of careful to make up for." He lifts her, she wraps around him, and carries her toward the stairs. They leave evidence scattered in the living room, passion finally unleashed, restraint finally abandoned. At the top of the stairs, he presses her against the wall, kisses her breathless. and she can feel his desire building again. "I can't get enough of you," he says. "Good," she replies. "Don't." They make it to the bedroom. They have all day. They have the rest of their lives. And for the first time in 7 years, she doesn't feel like she's dying of thirst. She feels claimed, desired, essential. She feels enough. They burn the letters on a Saturday morning in early December, almost exactly 7 years after they met. They do it in the fireplace, standing together, taking turns feeding the pages to the flames. 8 letters, 9 letters. She's lost count. Each one a confession, an accusation, a map of the territory between who they were and who they're becoming. "Do you want to read them first?" she asks. "There are a few you haven't seen." He considers, then shakes his head. "No, I know what they say, or enough of what they say. I think maybe they've done their work." So they burn them. The paper catches quickly, curling at the edges, the ink disappearing into ash. She watches her own handwriting consumed and feels lighter, feels like she's releasing something she's been carrying for too long. When the last letter is burning, Michael puts his arm around her waist, pulls her against him. "Are you sad?" he asks. "A little, but mostly relieved." "Me too." They watch the flames until there's nothing left but embers, and then they go to the kitchen and make breakfast together. Eggs, toast, coffee, the ordinary rituals of a Saturday morning, but different now, easier. "I have something for you," she says after they've eaten, after the dishes are washed and put away. She hands him an envelope, her name on it, his name below it, a stamp already affixed. "What is this?" "A letter. The last one, I think. Or the first new one. I'm not sure which." "Should I read it now?" "If you want." He opens it carefully, unfolds the single page. She watches his face as he reads, sees the moment when his eyes brighten, when his mouth softens. When he's done, he looks at her. "I choose you," he reads aloud. "Not because you're safe, not because you're stable, not because you're the best option or the most practical choice. I choose you because you're willing to be scared with me, because you're willing to admit you don't have the answers, because you kiss me like you're claiming me and touch me like I matter urgently, and need me in a way that gives me permission to need you back." He folds the letter, puts it in his pocket. "Is that true?" he asks. "Every word. And if it gets hard again, when we forget, when we fall back into being careful, then we remind each other, we write more letters, we tell the truth, we ask for what we want." He nods slowly. "And you'll stay? I'm not going anywhere, are you?" "No." He pulls her close, kisses the top of her head. "I'm right where I want to be." They decide to take a trip. Not a grand vacation, neither of them has time for that, but a weekend away. Somewhere they've never been. Somewhere new. They choose a cabin in the mountains, 3 hours north, where December snow is already falling. They arrive at dusk, the sky purple and pink, the trees heavy with white. "It's beautiful," she says, standing on the porch while Michael brings in their bags. "Come inside," he calls. "It's freezing out there." But she stays a moment longer, breathing cold air, feeling alive in her skin in a way she hasn't in years. Then she goes inside, where Michael has already started a fire, where wine is being opened, where a weekend of honesty and hunger and choosing each other is just beginning. That night, after they've made love, not carefully, not quietly, but with the urgent need that's become their new language, she lies in his arms and asks, "Do you think we would have made it, if I hadn't written those letters, if you hadn't found them?" "I don't know," he says honestly. "Maybe. Or maybe we would have just continued, been fine, been comfortable. Would that have been enough? For me? Maybe. I'm good at accepting things, at making do." He pauses. "But not for you." and eventually your hunger would have eaten through everything. I'd rather have this, risk and truth and actually feeling things, than slow suffocation disguised as peace. She turns to look at him. When did you get so wise? When I got so scared I had no choice. They fall asleep like that, skin to skin, honest and whole. The weekend passes in a blur of snow and firelight, long conversations and longer silences, the kind where you can just be present without having to perform being together. On Sunday morning, he wakes early and finds her standing at the window, watching the snowfall. What are you thinking? He asks, coming to stand behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. That I'm happy, she says, and that it scares me, because I keep waiting for something to ruin it. Keep waiting to wake up and find out it was temporary. It might be, he says, not the love. I don't think that's temporary, but the ease, the feeling that we've figured it out, that might not last. So what do? We don't wait for it to get hard again. We don't brace for impact. We just stay here, in this moment, in this happiness. And when it gets hard, because it will, we remember that we did this once. We found our way back. We can do it again. She leans back against him, feels his warmth, his solidity, his presence. I choose you, she says. I want you to know that. I choose you. I know, he says. I can feel it. They drive home through snow that's still falling. The road's slick and slow. Neither of them minds. They're not in a hurry. When they pull into their driveway, their house looks different. Or maybe they're different, and the house just looks like itself. A place they've chosen, a life they're building, a commitment they're honouring not out of obligation but out of desire. Inside, there's a letter waiting for her on the kitchen table, from him. When did you write this? She asks, holding the envelope. Last night, after you fell asleep. She opens it. Dear love, I'm watching you sleep, and I'm thinking about thresholds. The one we crossed 7 years ago when we got married. The one we crossed when I found your letters. The one we're crossing now into whatever comes next. You asked me once if love is enough. I told you I didn't know, but I think I do now. Love isn't enough if you're asking it to be a shield. If you're asking it to protect you from hunger, from fear, from the terror of wanting something you might not get. But love is enough if you're asking it to be a foundation, if you're asking it to be the place you return to after you've been brave, after you've risked, after you've admitted what you actually want. I want you, not the version of you who's grateful and patient and accommodating. I want the version who's hungry, who admits she's thirsty, who demands to be devoured. And I want to be the man who does the devouring, not carefully, not apologetically, but completely. So here's my promise. I will need you. I will claim you. I will remind you every day that you're essential. And if we forget, when we forget, we'll write more letters. We'll tell the truth. We'll choose each other again. Because that's what love is, I think. Not a feeling that arrives and stays, but a choice we make over and over, a threshold we cross again and again. I choose you. I will always choose you. She reads it twice, then sets it down and goes to find him. He's in the living room, standing by the window looking out at their snow-covered street. Thank you, she says. He turns. For what? For being willing to be scared with me, he smiles. Thank you for making it worth it. She goes to him, and he wraps his arms around her, and they stand there as evening falls, as their life together continues, as the future they're building moment by moment unfolds, and she thinks, yes, this is enough. This is more than enough. This is everything. The end. Quiet kind of brave. The The storm arrived 3 weeks early, as if winter had forgotten its own schedule. Marcus watched it move through the valley from the ranger station window, a wall of grey advancing like something ancient and indifferent, erasing the familiar contours of the mountain range he'd mapped in his mind over 15 years of rescues. The radio crackled intermittently, weather reports punctuated by static that sounded like the mountain itself clearing its throat. "Single hiker," dispatch said. "Last check-in was the Devil's Thumb trailhead, 6 hours ago. Phone's going straight to voicemail." Marcus folded the map with practiced efficiency, creasing it along lines worn soft from repetition. He didn't ask unnecessary questions. The other volunteers were already gearing up, headlamps tested, rope coiled, first aid kits inventoried with the kind of attention that kept people alive. They moved with the synchronized precision of a ritual, each gesture honed by repetition and consequence. The snow was falling sideways when they reached the trailhead, small and vicious, the kind that found every gap in your clothing. Marcus led because he always led, because 15 years had taught him to read the mountain's moods, to sense where a disoriented hiker might seek shelter or lose the trail entirely. He didn't think about courage anymore. Courage was just the name people gave to momentum, to moving forward when sitting still meant freezing. They found her 2 miles up, in a shallow cave formed by an overhang of granite. Not huddled, not injured, not panicked. She was sitting with her back against stone, knees drawn up, staring at the curtain of snow with an expression that wasn't fear so much as weary contemplation. Her emergency blanket was folded neatly beside her, unused. "I have plenty of daylight left," she said when Marcus appeared at the cave's mouth. No gratitude, no relief, just a simple statement of fact. I wasn't lost. He studied her in the grey light. Mid-30s probably. Dark hair escaped from beneath a wool hat, framing a face that was pale but composed. Her gear was good quality, properly packed. She wore the kind of boots that meant she knew what she was doing. "The storm's getting worse," Marcus said. "We need to move now if we're going to beat the worst of it." She looked at him for a long moment, and he had the unsettling sense of being evaluated, weighed against some private metric he couldn't name. Then she stood, shouldered her pack with practiced efficiency, and followed him out into the wind. They descended in near silence, punctuated only by necessary communication. Watch the ice here, step left, and the howl of wind through pine. But there was something in the silence that wasn't empty, an awareness. He could feel her presence behind him with unusual clarity, as if the storm had stripped away the normal buffer of courtesy and pretense. When he offered his hand to help her navigate a steep section of trail, her fingers were steady in his, and neither of them let go quite as quickly as the terrain required. At the trailhead, the other volunteers were warming up the vehicles, exhaust plumes vanishing into snow. Marcus helped her into the back of the SUV, their shoulders brushing in the confined space. She smelled like pine and cold air and something else. Lavender, maybe, or sage. Something that didn't belong to the mountain but carried its own kind of wilderness. "Anna Reeves," she said, extending her hand with sudden formality, as if only now remembering the conventions of introduction. Marcus Webb. Her hand was smaller than his, but not delicate. There were calluses along the base of her fingers. "You hike these trails often?" "First time." She smiled, and it transformed her face entirely, a warmth that seemed to surprise even her. "I'm visiting, or hiding. I haven't decided which." The admission hung between them, more intimate than the handshake. Marcus nodded, not trusting himself to respond, and turned his attention to the road. But he was acutely aware of her in the rearview mirror, watching the storm consume the mountain behind them, her expression unreadable. Marcus saw her again 4 days later at the fire station fundraiser, a subdued affair of chili and cornbread, donation jars on folding tables, photos of past rescues pinned to corkboards like evidence of small miracles. She stood alone near the coffee urn, hands wrapped around a paper cup for warmth, studying a map of the mountain range with the focused attention of someone committing terrain to memory. Planning another escape? He asked, and immediately regretted the presumption. But she smiled. Maybe. Or maybe just learning where I am for the first time. They talked for an hour, standing slightly apart from the crowd, voices low enough to maintain privacy in the echoing space of the station. She told him fragments. A life spent in Boston caring for a mother, through long illness, work as a medical illustrator that had slowly consumed all other aspects of existence. A small inheritance that had purchased this temporary freedom, but not yet any clarity about what to do with it. Everyone keeps asking when I'm going back, she said, staring into her coffee, as if staying here is just avoidance, postponing the inevitable. Is it? Marcus asked. I don't know. She looked up at him, and he saw something raw in her expression. I spent 10 years being brave in all the ways people expect, showing up, enduring, not complaining, and now I'm terrified that if I go back I'll just keep doing it until there's nothing left of me worth rescuing. Marcus had no answer. He recognized the exhaustion in her words, the kind that came from enduring rather than living. It was different from his own careful avoidance, but perhaps not entirely unlike it. They began encountering each other with increasing frequency after that. She appeared at trail, maintenance days, working alongside volunteers to clear deadfall and reinforce eroded sections of path. She was methodical, uncomplaining, content with long stretches of silence, interrupted only by the rasp of saws and the thud of wood being stacked. Marcus found himself timing his breaks to coincide with hers, sitting on fallen logs while they shared water and granola bars and observations about the mountain's moods. Once she asked him why he'd started volunteering for search and rescue. My brother, he said after a long pause. He was killed in a climbing accident 15 years ago. I wasn't there. I was supposed to be, but I took a shift at work instead. He stared at his hands, scarred and capable. I guess I've been trying to make up for not being there ever since. Anna was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You can't rescue your way out of grief. I know, Marcus said, but I can keep other people's brothers from dying alone on a mountain. She nodded, understanding more. Then he'd said, That's a kind of bravery too, even if it's not the kind you need. The observation should have stung, but it didn't. It felt like recognition. The physical awareness between them intensified with each encounter. Marcus noticed everything. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when concentrating, the precise angle of her jaw, the faint constellation of freckles visible only when she turned her face towards sunlight. Once, crossing a narrow log bridge over a creek swollen with snowmelt, he took her hand to steady her, and they both froze for a heartbeat longer than necessary, the current rushing beneath them, before continuing across in careful silence. Another time, sorting donated gear in the cramped storage room of the station, they reached for the same box simultaneously, hands colliding. The contact was electric, immediate. Anna pulled back, colour rising in her cheeks, and Marcus stepped away, heart hammering with an intensity that had nothing to do with exertion and everything to do with proximity. Sorry, she murmured. Don't be, he said, and heard the roughness in his own voice. They stood there in the narrow aisle between shelves, close enough that he could see her pulse beating at the base of her throat, close enough to kiss, close enough to topple the careful equilibrium they'd maintained, but neither moved. The moment stretched and broke, and they returned to work with exaggerated focus, the air between them dense with everything unspoken. Later that week, they met at the small cafe on Main Street, the one with fogged windows and mismatched chairs where locals gathered to escape the cold. Anna ordered tea. Marcus, his usual black coffee. They sat across from each other in a corner booth, knees nearly touching beneath a small table, conversation wandering through safer territories, books, music, the particular quality of light at different elevations. But underneath the ordinary exchange, desire moved like a current. Marcus was intensely aware of her, the curve of her mouth, the graceful architecture of her hands, the way intelligence and sorrow and humour flickered across her face in equal measure. He wanted to touch her. He wanted to know what she sounded like when she let her guard down completely. He wanted to understand the shape of her grief and whether it fit against his own. But wanting felt dangerous. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff with inadequate rope. As they parted on the street outside, Anna touched his arm, just briefly, gloved fingers on his jacket sleeve, and said, "Thank you for this." "For what?" Marcus asked. "For not trying to rescue me." She walked away before he could respond, disappearing into the early winter dusk, and Marcus stood alone on the sidewalk, heart hammering, wondering if she understood that not rescuing her was taking more courage than he'd known he possessed. The fracture began with a phone call. Marcus was cleaning equipment at the station. When Anna appeared in the doorway, phone pressed to her ear, face drained of colour. He watched her nod, speak quietly, nod again. When she ended the call, she stood motionless for a long moment before meeting his gaze. "I have to go back," she said. "My mother's estate. There are complications, legal things. My presence is required." "When?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer would be immediate. "Tomorrow, maybe a week, maybe longer." She twisted the phone in her hands. "I'm sorry, I know we were supposed to..." "Don't apologise." He kept his voice carefully neutral, though something cold was settling in his chest. "You have responsibilities." "Right, responsibilities." The word sounded bitter in her mouth. She left without saying goodbye. Marcus told himself it was temporary. He focused on work, on the upcoming winter training exercises, on the dozen small emergencies that required his attention. But at night, alone in his cabin, he found himself checking his phone, obsessively, waiting for messages that didn't come. The silence felt like judgment, confirmation that he'd been foolish to imagine she might stay, that he was still just the man who rescued people and called it a life. When Anna finally called 3 days later, her voice was strained. "I'm sorry I didn't reach out sooner. Everything here is complicated." "You don't owe me explanations," Marcus said, hating how formal he sounded. "Don't I?" There was an edge to her voice he hadn't heard before. "You're doing it again, Marcus. Maintaining distance, being noble, not asking for anything." "What do you want me to ask for?" Silence stretched between them, miles of it. "I don't know," Anna said finally. "Maybe I want you to need something from me besides gratitude." "Anna, I have to go. There's a meeting with the lawyers." She paused. "I'll call you." But she didn't call. Days accumulated into a week, then 2. Marcus threw himself into work with renewed intensity, volunteering for every training exercise, every equipment check, every educational outreach. His team noticed but said nothing. They knew the signs of someone running from something they couldn't outpace. The breaking point came during a high-risk rescue in early December. A teenager had ignored weather warnings and gotten stranded on an exposed ridge. Conditions were borderline, winds gusting to 50 miles per hour, visibility near zero, temperature plummeting. The incident commander wanted to wait for conditions to improve. Marcus insisted they move immediately. "That kid's alone and scared," he said, jaw tight. "Every minute we wait is a minute we use to assess whether we can reach him safely," the commander interrupted. "I know you want to help him, Marcus, but I won't risk the team on a marginal call." They waited. The winds eased just enough. The rescue succeeded. But afterward, Marcus overheard 2 volunteers talking in low voices about his judgment, about whether his decision-making was sound, about whether he was too invested, too reckless, too willing to risk himself and others for the sake of not leaving someone alone on the mountain. That night, Marcus drove to the overlook above town and sat in his truck, staring at the dark shape of the mountain range against the sky. He thought about his brother, about Anna, about the teenager they'd brought down safely, and the dozen other people he'd helped save over the years. He thought about what Anna had said. You can't rescue your way out of grief. Maybe she was right. Maybe he'd been trying to prove his own worth through other people's survival, keeping himself in perpetual motion so he never has to face the stillness where all his failures waited. Maybe that was why he'd held back with Anna, not out of respect but out of fear. Fear that if he asked her to stay, if he admitted he needed her, he'd be choosing himself over duty, choosing desire over the version of himself he'd built so carefully over 15 years. And maybe she'd sensed that hesitation and mistaken it for indifference. He pulled out his phone, typed a message. "I'm sorry I never asked you to stay. I was afraid that needing you would make me selfish." He stared at the words for a long time, then he deleted them and drove home in silence. Anna returned in late December unannounced. Marcus learned she was back when he saw her truck parked outside the cafe, covered in road salt and snow. He sat in his own vehicle for 10 minutes, heart hammering, before finally going inside. She was in the same corner booth they'd shared before, hands wrapped around a mug of tea, staring out the window at the snow-covered street. She looked thinner, tired, but her expression was determined rather than defeated. "I thought you weren't coming back," Marcus said, sliding into the seat across from her without invitation. "I thought so too." She met his gaze directly. "But it turns out I'm terrible at running away. I kept thinking about what you said, about your brother, about why you do this work. And I realise we're both doing the same thing. You rescue people because you couldn't save him. I ran because I was afraid that staying anywhere, choosing anything, would trap me the way caregiving trapped me for so long. Anna, let me finish." Her voice was steady but urgent. "I thought you saw me as another person to save, someone broken who needed fixing. And maybe at first I needed that. But then I realised you were pulling away, maintaining distance, and I thought it was because I wasn't worth staying for." Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. "That's not... Anna, I pulled away because I was terrified. Terrified that wanting you meant abandoning the only version of myself I know how to be. The one who shows up, who helps, who doesn't need anything from anyone." "But that's not bravery," Anna said softly. "That's just another kind of hiding." The truth of it hit him like cold water. She was right. He'd been calling it service, calling it duty, but really he'd been avoiding the far more frightening vulnerability of being wanted for himself rather than for what he could do. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "I don't know how to need someone. Neither do I." Anna reached across the table, took his hand in both of hers. "But maybe we could figure it out together." They sat there in the warm cafe, hands joined across scarred wood, while snow fell outside and the mountain waited in its perpetual silence. Later, they drove separately to Marcus's cabin on the edge of the national forest, a small, austere structure that suited him, all clean lines and practical furniture and windows facing the peaks. Inside, they shed layers methodically, coats, boots, the armour of ordinary courtesy. The cabin was cold. Marcus built a fire while Anna stood at the window, watching darkness settle over the valley. When he turned from the hearth, she was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Vulnerable, but not uncertain. Open in a way that made his breath catch. "I need to know," she said, "that you see me. Not the person who needed rescuing. Not someone to be saved or fixed or helped. Just me, Anna. Complicated and scared and trying to figure out how to choose a life instead of just enduring one." "I see you," Marcus said, and crossed the space between them. "I see how brave you are, how you're trying to build something new even though you don't know what shape it will take. I see how you're afraid of staying but doing it anyway. That's the kind of courage I've never had." "You have it now," Anna said, and kissed him. The kiss was gentle at first, almost tentative, a question rather than a claim. But when Marcus's hands came up to cup her face, when Anna's fingers tangled in his hair, gentleness transformed into urgency. They kissed like people who'd been holding back too long, like the breaking of a dam, like the answer to a question neither had known how to ask. Marcus pulled back just enough to whisper, "Is this... you sure?" "I'm sure," Anna said. "I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you. Not because I need rescuing, but because I want you. All of you. The parts that are brave and the parts that are scared and the parts that don't know how to be needed." He kissed her again, slower this time, reverent. They moved to his bedroom, spare, functional, a quilt his grandmother had made covering the bed, and in the near dark, with only firelight filtering through the doorway, they undressed each other with deliberate care. No urgency now, just attention. Marcus traced the architecture of her body with his hands, learning the map of her, the curve of her hip, the hollow at the base of her throat, the surprising softness of her inner wrist. Anna explored him with equal focus, fingers finding scars and muscle and the places where tension lived. When they finally came together, it felt less like passion and more like recognition. Two people who'd been lost in their separate wildernesses finding each other in the clearing. Marcus moved slowly, watching Anna's face, learning what made her gasp and arch and clutch at his shoulders. She was fully present, eyes open, meeting his gaze with an intimacy more profound than the physical joining of their bodies. "Stay with me," he whispered against her temple, and he wasn't sure if he meant now or tomorrow or all the days after. "I'm here," Anna said, and he felt the truth of it in the way she held him, in the way she yielded and demanded in equal measure, in the way she said his name like it meant something. Afterward they lay tangled together beneath the quilt, skin cooling in the mountain air, neither quite willing to move. Marcus pressed his face into the curve of Anna's shoulder, breathing her in, feeling more vulnerable than he'd ever felt on any rescue, and somehow more whole. "I don't know what happens next," he admitted. "Neither do I," Anna said. "But I'm staying. Not because I have to, but because I want to. I'm choosing this town, this mountain, this life. I'm choosing you." "That's terrifying," Marcus said. "Yes," Anna agreed, "but maybe the good kind of terrifying, the kind that means you're actually alive." They fell asleep as snow began to fall again. Two people who'd been brave in all the wrong ways finally learning what it meant to be brave enough to stay. Winter deepened, and then, imperceptibly, began its slow retreat. The change was subtle at first, snow melting in uneven patches, exposing dark earth that steamed in brief moments of sunlight. Creeks swelled with runoff. The quality of light shifted, growing warmer, lingering a few minutes longer each evening. Anna moved into Marcus's cabin in late January, not because she had to, but because they both wanted the daily proximity, the ordinary intimacies of shared space. She set up her illustration work at the kitchen table, ink and pencils spreading across the scarred wood, while Marcus planned training exercises and updated maps. They developed rhythms, morning coffee in silence, watching the mountain emerge from shadow, evening walks along trails they were learning together, nights where they talked or didn't talk, where desire rose and was answered without urgency, where sleep came easy in the knowledge that they'd both be there in the morning. Marcus learned to step back from search and rescue work, not abandoning it, but allowing it to be part of his life rather than the totality of it. He turned down overnight shifts, delegated responsibilities, let younger volunteers lead exercises. It felt strange at first, almost like betrayal, but then he'd come home to find Anna working at the table, and she'd look up and smile, and he'd remember that there were other ways to be brave. Anna found work illustrating field guides for a local conservation organisation. Work that kept her in the mountains but on her own terms. She took a part-time position at the library, shelving books and helping tourists plan hiking routes, and discovered she liked the small-town ritual of it. The way people began to recognise her, to stop and chat, to include her in the fabric of daily life. They didn't promise each other forever. The wounds were too recent, the fears too close to the surface, but they promised each other today, and then tomorrow, and then the day after that. A string of present moments that accumulated into something that felt, tentatively, like a life. In early March, they hiked the trail where they'd first met. The snow was mostly gone from the lower elevations, though it still clung to the peaks, brilliant and distant. They walked slowly, not because the terrain demanded it, but because there was no need to rush. At the cave where Marcus had found Anna, they paused. "I wasn't really lost," Anna said, echoing her words from that first encounter. "But I wasn't found either. I was just suspended, waiting." "For what?" Marcus asked. "For permission to want something." She turned to him, backlit by morning sun, beautiful in her wind-blown dishevelment. "For permission to stay. And now? Now I know I don't need permission. I just need courage. The kind that means choosing something even when you're scared. The kind that means trusting that staying is just as brave as leaving." Marcus took her hand, lacing their fingers together. "I spent 15 years thinking courage meant moving forward no matter what. Never stopping, never resting, never admitting I needed anything. But you taught me that sometimes courage means standing still, means saying, 'This is enough. I am enough. We are enough.'" They stood together at the cave's entrance, looking out at the mountain range that had brought them together and, in its own austere way, taught them how to stay. The landscape was unchanged, granite and pine and the patient accumulation of seasons, but they were different, softer in some ways, stronger in others. Two people who'd been lost in their separate wildernesses, now learning to be found. As they continued up the trail, Marcus noticed something he'd missed before. Tiny wildflowers pushing through the last patches of snow, improbable and determined. Alpine forget-me-nots. Their blue almost painful in its intensity. They bloomed in the harshest conditions, in the brief window between winter and the next winter, existing not despite the difficulty but within it. "Look," he said, pointing them out to Anna. She knelt, studying the small, resilient blooms. When she stood, her eyes were bright. "That's us," she said, growing in the hard places, not waiting for perfect conditions, just choosing to bloom anyway. They hiked on as the sun climbed higher, burning off the morning chill, illuminating the path ahead in increments. The trail disappeared into trees, but they knew where it led. Not to certainty, not to any destination they could name, but to each other, again and again, one chosen step at a time. Behind them, the forget-me-nots trembled in the mountain wind, blue as promise, delicate as courage, blooming in the spaces where winter had been. The end.